What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Already Did It, your movie podcast for reboots, remakes, sequels, adaptations, and why we keep telling the same story over and over again. As always, I am your host, Blake Schultz, and with me is Terrence Tatum.
Hello, everyone.
And this week we are talking about the release of Megan 2, the sequel to an original IP that we got just a few years ago, and how quickly we are back with our favorite slaying robot friend. It's, uh, yeah, let's get into it. Terrence, what did you think of this movie starting from wherever you'd like? Because I feel like this is a fascinating example of a sequel.
This is a this movie's a lot. It's funny in that I feel like this is a movie that they had the date for, and then they were like, "All right, this made a ton. The first one made a ton of money. We're gonna do a sequel. We don't have a story. Cool. Throw that son of a bitch into ChatGPT and see what comes of it." And I feel like this is sort of a amalgamation of like the greatest hits of sci-fi android robot movie history into one sort of sandwiched movie with a Megan skin on the top of it. It's fascinating what this movie is because yes, it's a different genre. I think people think the first film was a horror film akin to like Gremlins to Gremlins 2, Happy Death Day to Happy Death Day 2, even Terminator, which was the first one was a horror movie, the second one becomes this big sci-fi film. That's what this is sort of in line with a genre swap, and it's a wild swing. And we'll get into a little bit why it's a little bit more jarring than the typical swing that we've had in some of those films, where I feel like the at least the DNA of what those worlds were remains the same from those different, where this one's a little bit like this feels like a whiplash. This doesn't feel like it's the same world. But I never had a moment where I was bored or wasn't entertained, which I think is a sort of the point of some of these type of films. But I also will never remember anything about this. And if I'm talking about Megan 1 or Megan 2.0, I'm going to always go back and watch the original because I just think it's a better made film and better, tighter story, whereas this one gets so big that it gets kind of swallowed in on itself.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when you look at it's hard not to look at this movie and compare it to everything you mentioned because it's not new to make a sequel and be like, what if it was a Looney Tunes movie this time? Which is, I think, very what Gremlins to Gremlins 2 is. And I
Yes.
think even more popularized by the Key and Peele sketch about how crazy that movie gets. But I do think Terminator to Terminator 2 is the best allegation for this one because allegation's got to be the wrong word, but that's fine.
Parallel. We'll use
Yeah,
parallel. It's
parallel.
better.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
best parallel because there's no way to not be right about that. Anyone who saw the trailer knew that this was an enormous leap from the first one,
Yeah.
from our small, relatively contained story of a person who wants to make a toy and impress her like techno addicted kid and
Yeah.
makes a killer robot akin to child's play, but instead of magic, it's technology now.
Hmm.
And then we get here where we immediately start talking about the dangers of AI and letting it into our kids. And you wouldn't give your kid cocaine. Why give them a computer? Is like one of the first things we
It's in the first
hear.
10 minutes of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, she's become an activist in the political sphere, which is
Yeah.
already just so much different and bigger. Her, her now basically daughter is doing her own research into robotics and programming and trying to figure out if she can add morality to it. And
Yeah.
immediately the AI is like, no, we
Nah.
don't understand morality.
Don't want that code.
Um, which is, I mean, it's interesting because it's so like ripped from the headlines of today. But I think that where it doesn't really work the same way that a Gremlins 2 or a Terminator 2 or a Happy Death Day 2 works is that the stakes of all those other franchises remain grounded is the wrong word, but Terminator 1 is something is sent back in time. We have to kill John Connor's mom. Now it's something sent back in time. We have the same objective. The heroes have the same objective. we're living in a world where we're preventing a future. Happy Death Day 2 is a similar, like, well, we're still trying to figure out how to get out of this loop that we're stuck in and what happened.
Yeah.
And even like Gremlins is still very much like, hey, a company wants to use this creature to make money.
It's
Like,
grounded within the world that they've already sort of built. That's what it's grounded within. Like each of those is grounded
yeah,
within that world that they've sort of already given us and established. This, nah.
no, we start that first one with just like, hey, a computer's gone haywire. It will now do anything to protect Katie, including killing Katie. Like,
Hmm.
we will now do whatever it takes. We've gone full Age of Ultron. The best way to protect the world is to destroy all of you because you hurt the world. Where, and this one is, hey, somebody sold this technology small soldier style
Yeah.
to the government, and we're now having peace summits at the UK and rebuilding Megan to battle this other one in a in a rush to stop the super AI
Yeah, to get
that
to the super
that in the
AI.
80s became sentient and
Yeah.
is now hidden,
That
and
has
it's just
been just gaining knowledge for the last couple of decades. Now this omnipotent power. So whoever gets, whichever of these androids get it first, they will become God, essentially.
yeah, and the only reason that Terminator gets away with it is because the first Terminator is about
It already
this
sort of
exact thing.
establishes this.
We're
It already establishes
here.
that world. Whereas here we're dealing with basically a home invasion type film. Like this AI robot tries to sort of infiltrate this home and sort of separate Katie from Gemma. That's what that story is about. This is like, what if they had to save the world? Wait, what? Hold
Yeah,
on. That's a
it's
massive leap that we have taken.
and we might as well for a while rename the podcast Terminator 2 Did It Better. Because I feel like this is like the third podcast about AI where I've been like, yeah, but the
Yeah,
Matrix and T2 already did it.
yeah.
But I will say what is interesting to me, and I don't know that I love it, is that I feel like more and more movies are being like, but guys, maybe we can rehabilitate the AI
Hmm.
and it can work with us. Like, we did this in Companion where she was the hero of that movie, and we were supposed to be like, oh, this guy really, he's abusing the AI.
Right.
And I feel like this movie is like, no, but what if even the end of the movie, the thesis is like, well, no, we have to be better parents for the AI. Not
But better
better
parents
parents for
for
the
the AI to
AI.
teach it better, to grow it better.
And
Screw that, I'm messing up my niece slash daughter.
I feel like this is the movies kind of shifting gears to being like, dare I say, propaganda for
AI is
AI
not as bad, which is why
and for
I'm not lying that I think that this script was written by AI and they're kind of just like wink wink nod nod.
yeah,
AI is great, right?
it feels like we're getting more movies that are like, well, guys, I mean, it's
Hear me
here.
out.
Where it's like
What if we used it?
every single Terminator and Matrix movie, we're like,
Like,
it's
no, 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 no.
so, not only is it bad, it's so unrealistically bad that Sarah Connor's in a mental institution
I
for
will
the
go
movie.
to this man's home and shoot him in front of his kid.
Like, yeah, and now they're like, nah, but like, what if Megan has feelings? But it's like, I just don't know that I
Yeah,
like this.
yeah.
Because I did feel bad in the movie when she is like brought in by the military and she goes and like hides in the corner like a scared animal. And I was like, oh,
Oh
guys. And
no,
then part of
they've
me was
done
like,
so much.
no,
Wait a minute.
no, the killer robot is
She's
bad.
murdered a lot of people. She probably, I don't care if her jaw's removing from, that's fine. It's fine. Why am I sad?
And I think it's an interesting thesis to watch. I'm like,
Yeah.
we're gonna get a fifth Matrix where it's like, actually, Agent Smith had some good points. We are a disease. Like, but you're right. I was from start to finish entertained by this movie.
Yeah.
Uh, it's relatively like thin in terms of like, I wonder if that dude is the bad.
Yeah, like you can
Um,
tell pretty quickly that that's going to be the bad guy.
the comedy beats though always made me laugh.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's funny because like you and I talked, this feels like it acts as a traditional sci-fi action film. Like it doesn't even take horror beats. It's like, nope, we are
nope.
just an action film. Like we're gonna have an opening button that tells you the main story of what we're doing, and we're gonna follow the same beats as a typical action film. And for a part of it, it feels like it's doing it almost to a detriment. I almost wish they kind of swung more for the fences and just go batshit crazy, but they almost follow the structure of what a typical sci-fi action film does. And every once in a while, they're like, "Yeah, this is kind of ridiculous. Let's have a moment here to just like
The
talk about how ridiculous this film is."
the biggest thing they do is in the trailer, and it's the wingsuit scene.
Yeah,
That's like the most
like
egregious
how did we get
beat.
here? Yeah,
Um, and you're right. Like I think if we're gonna compare it to Gremlins 2, that worked because they just went
nuts.
so
Yeah,
batshit insane.
yeah.
And like so does Happy Death Day 2. And
Hmm.
in its own special way, Terminator 2 is kind of like it's weird now to think about it, but that was the most expensive action
Yeah,
movie.
you go
He
from
does
a
drive a semi truck through the Los Angeles River
yeah,
to kill a child. Like
you
that's
go from a lo-fi horror movie to like what is happening?
the biggest blockbuster
Yeah,
of the time.
yeah,
Um, and now that budget scales in
yeah.
comparison
It's nothing
to
compared
any
to yeah,
movie. Like,
correct.
uh, so it is funny that it's like, yeah, usually when you do this genre switch, you kind of have to go just crazy big.
Yeah,
And I feel like the set piece for Megan to be huge is there. But the most fun we have is when she's like in the little robot and kind of bouncing around
yeah,
the house.
yeah.
And then she gets her body. Um, and then it kind of is just like a James Bond Mission
Hmm.
Impossible movie. And then we do like kung fu with the two
Where
robots
she
and we're
downloads
and
the
we're
new
out.
Matrix and we're out. Yeah, it's that is the most interesting part of the film when she's doing the stuff behind the scenes to keep Gemma and them at the new place and all the stuff. They're like, oh, she's sort of orchestrating all of this and put her in a little body. That is the fun part. And then it becomes very by the books once we get to the action pieces. And they start kind of stealing a lot from like movies like Upgrade or RoboCop, where you're like, okay, the idea here existed in films that had the time, because that's what the entire film was sort of about, to sort of flesh them out, where you're just stealing a brief moment and then moving on, dropping it. Like, all right, cool, never mind. We're gonna move on to the next robotic thing that we can think of that existed in sci-fi history.
Do
I
you
also
think the do you think the
uh,
PG-13
I was
rating is what
I
holds
was
that
gonna say
back?
I also think that that's the problem. I think for me, I feel like this movie would have been better. In addition to going batshit crazy, a part of going batshit crazy for me, I think would have also been just go violent. Like if you're doing these big action beats, kind of do like Upgrade, where you're like breaking arms, but like have blood spurt out. Like blood should be all over the place for this, because I think that would have sort of allowed us to sort of, all right, this is just having fun now. Where because it's PG-13, it sort of pulls all of that back. And it does a lot of shots in this movie do where we see blood spatter or we see the ramifications of the violence, but not the piece where we'll see, oh, they severed an arm, but we saw it off screen and all we see is them come back with the arm. And I'm like, so we're just moving away. I would have rather have seen the actual kill than I would have rather seen the limb. I've seen limbs plenty of times. Show me the actual sequence of death.
Yeah, I think because the whole movie doesn't really feel campy enough for what its marketing promised.
Yeah,
And I do think that the violence is what kind of holds that back. Like
right.
it never really gets like insanely like bloody or grotesque or gory or it's like actiony even as a
And I think
result of
and I
that.
think the action isn't genius enough or new enough or inventive enough for us for it just to get by on the laurels of this being an action film. Like that's not entertaining enough in this film. Especially if I've just gone from seeing Ballerina to this, I'm like, well, this action is ridiculous. This is nothing.
Yeah, it is. It becomes a weird thing where the like the AI stuff we've kind of seen served up even recently in Mission
Hmm.
Impossible. The
Yeah.
action beats have been better in Ballerina, in Mission Impossible, in Thunderbolts.
Hmm.
The horror beats are better. The family beats are better in 28 Years Later.
Right.
Almost everything this movie tries to serve you feels like the fast food version of something
Yes.
else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, and I don't dislike
I
Chipotle,
I like fast
but
food, but there's a time and a place, and I feel like this is just one for this franchise. I feel like this movie could have done a smarter way to get into your second one. If you want to go big, I feel like you can get there, but you might want to take a little bit more time, like do a part two and then go to a part three and go stakes as big as you are. But I feel like this releasing in dead of the summer is just a terrible. Some of it is the timing of the film. Like I feel like I would respond probably better to this film if it came out in February than I did to this in June, July when we're about to get like Jurassic and Superman and all those big films or F1's out. Yeah.
Yeah, it almost gives it an identity crisis to be like, hey, are you coming down from the big action tent poles and want a break
Right.
before Jurassic World, Superman, and Fantastic Four come out? Come see our robot action follow up to a horror movie that
Right.
we made.
Yeah.
Um, and it is weird because it's worked so well for some franchises, and it doesn't not work here, but I just feel like it's worked better in other places. Like I just the more I sit with it, the more I am like, oh yeah, like Megan's fun and the agency of everybody else is kind of like weird, but
Yeah.
Amelia's not that interesting.
I think
The
that's
black box isn't that
I
interesting.
think that's the other piece of this. The only character that's intriguing or interesting or has any sort of growth or that I care about is Megan. And that's a detriment because in the first film, I cared about Katie. I don't anymore in this film. Like by the end of this movie, I was like, she's irrelevant to this. I don't care
No,
about her.
they really make her a plot point more than
Yeah.
anything else. And they kind of try to give her, but even her arc of like, hey, she can take care of herself isn't
Her,
for her. It's in service of
correct. Another character.
Megan and Gemma
Correct.
being like, oh, she's self
Yeah.
sufficient, which
Right.
is not the same as having a character learn that they are self
Correct.
sufficient.
Right. They're
Uh,
someone else is learning that of them. That's not a growth for them. And so it's like, oh, that's a wasted character because she was a very important piece and a good character in the first film where now I don't care. And so you have all of these other characters and roughly it's a long in tooth. Like it's 2 hours, which it acts as it has the runtime of an action film. To your point, we have a lot of rehashed over, rewarmed up beats with characters that don't mean much. After a while I was entertained, it's like cotton candy. When I left the theater, I was like, I don't remember or care much about anything that just I just
no, and
saw.
it we get so far away from some of the stuff we set up because we do it so quick. We meet
Hmm.
the like rich tech guy who's going to buy the company, and then we're like through with him and his
Disposed.
company very quickly.
Yeah.
And then we're just kind of on to this like pseudo mystery. Even the like detective who's following them is like out of the game so
Hmm.
fast. And that's before we even talk about this lair that Megan's built under the house. Like it feels like all the fun and games in the movie happened like 3 days before the movie. Because
Yeah.
I was like, well, it kind of would have been fun to watch Megan rebuild
Prep.
herself
Yeah.
and do all this, but it is also like even for as insane as this movie is, it's a stretch that she's like created cement concrete Y2K
Like
bunkers.
the fact there's no, yeah, like that no one aided her in this is bizarre for a structure like that. Like a lot of the things I can go ahead and buy. Like I can buy that like she's moved around money in banks and said that like they were able to afford this place. I can buy that like she bought all the books off of eBay and stored them in a storage. Like all that stuff I can kind of buy. My brain has a hard time saying like, wait, she built a layer without having like physical arms to do so.
And the movie never really bothers to explain it. They're
No,
just sort of like, we have a layer now. Like
cool.
it's
Like they become the Flash from TV show. Like they're like, all right,
yeah,
we're all gonna go to layer and do stuff.
and it's another idea that I don't hate that feels very undercooked. Like I just feel there's a lot of things in this movie where the writers were like, they'll like it.
Yeah,
People
totally
people are
fine.
just gonna they just want to see Megan be Megan. They don't
Yeah,
care about the rest.
and
And I
that's what
urge
they're
you, audience, to care about the rest.
and that's what they're banking on. They're banking that they've done such a good job in the previous film of making Megan this bigger, basically making Megan Chucky. That's what they're trying to like this lot bigger than life. They can say whatever they wanted. They just have a ball. The audience is going to go with them wherever they want. And I don't feel like that first film created the cachet that I think they thought they got in comparison to where Chucky had a long-standing franchise before he switched to like I'm going to do black comedy. He did three straight horror movies before that switch.
And I think that's the other place the aforementioned movies we've compared it to kind of work is Megan in the first movie is like, there's funny moments like when she sings Titanium and does other
Hmm.
stuff, but she is still like a sinister robot.
Correct.
And like they kind of tried to rebrand her in the marketing of like this like sassy,
Yeah.
fun character. And then we just sort of are that in this movie. Like it like Terminator 2, which I will keep using, worked well because for the first, I don't know, 30 minutes of that movie, unless you've seen it, you don't know that Arnold isn't good
It's not the
because he's
one from previous.
still,
Correct.
yeah. And so
Yeah.
it is kind of weird. Like her biggest horror beat is like following us around in the house after she's like stopped these SWAT people. And it is
Yeah.
just like, I was
It's
mad. Don't blame me for what I did then. I'm a
it,
fun
I
robot
think that, yeah, I
now.
think that's also a part of my problem. A lot of the time she spends a great deal of this movie apologizing for the murders that she did in the first film. And I'm like, well, technically you're not the same person. Your your AI and your knowledge is different than the first time, so you don't shouldn't have to apologize. But it got old fast. I'm like, stop! Like you aren't. I don't need to see this. Like I want you to be that terrible person again. And so we end up in this weird world where you want to have the characteristics and the sound bites that Megan has, but not the characteristics of like, oh, this crazy thing is about to go nuts. Now you're kind of like, oh, she's sort of docile and kind of more, and you get moments of it where you see she kills a SWAT person, but then in the fall you see her little do the crawl. I'm like, oh, that's still in the DNA of like who she is, but like we don't get that as a whole because her character is so different than what we had sort of acclaimed. And so let's use Chucky as an example. No matter what, if you have Chucky in that horror version or if you have Chucky in the comedy, Chucky is still like, I'm going to kill you. Like, and I
Yeah.
don't give a damn. Whereas this one is a very different version of Megan outside of how she sounds and to an extent how she looks.
And
Because
it's kind
she's
of the same in
taller.
Gremlins. Like, all of them are still acting
Yeah,
the same. Gizmo is still gizmoing. Like
right.
and we have to go through all that in T2 of like, don't kill people. You have to listen to me, John Connor.
Hmm.
And I don't know why we didn't just steal that for this and have Katie be like, you can protect me without murdering people instead of having her be like, I have this inhibitor chip
I'm just
now. The
stuck.
audacity. Like
Yeah.
you could have kind of done because you're trying to do it. You're
I
trying to be like, she can learn empathy and mercy. And at the end, she has her like, I'm doing it because it's right.
I also think they
And I
do
was like, well,
themselves
then
a
we might as well just do it.
I also think they're doing themselves a disservice if they're saying that she is teaching herself and she is self-autonomous and she's AI. If you're saying that this person is growing and so smart that she would soon realize that after the first time that she tries to pull the trigger and she can't to kill someone, she should just automatically be like, okay, I'm going to shoot somebody in the
New
kneecap.
tech. Yeah.
Right.
New tactic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just
Um,
throw the gun down and run at it. Like
right.
there's a lot of other,
Yeah.
yeah, it's that weird thing where all the fun is there. I just think like it's like a little few screws that need to be tightened to really bring it up. But I laughed. It did get me.
I
I
did
did have
have
a good
moments. Yeah, I
time.
had some
Like
good times. I genuinely still like the character of Megan. I just want her to go back to being that murderous robot. And like you can have fun and you can make a comedy or an action film with her still being a murderer. You might have to do a couple of more passes at the script for it all to sort of work and make sense, but I don't think you have to soften her as much as they did in this film, and you can still sort of get the same version. Now, they do have a problem, however, if they do a third one, because they're going to have to keep aging her up. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna call her. And then you get into the weird part of where we start aging her up to a point where she would have to be sort of sexualized, and it just gets odd at that point. But I would come back to this world. I just think that they need to take some time away, take a breath, and sort of maybe instead of 2 to 3 years, let's do 8 years. Let her be fully grown up by the time that we get back to it, and just say, hey, I'm ready. I'm tired of being in this AI in this computer running your home, and again, I want to grow up and like see the world or something. I don't know, but like that's sort of the idea that I wouldn't mind revisiting this. It just needs to be a smarter sort of play to get there.
you want to do a bucket list, Megan? That's your
Yeah,
pitch.
yeah, like a
Because you know what? We've switched genres to the sequel. We've never done it to the
to the
threequel.
third.
We've
Yeah,
never either we don't make it to a third
right. It doesn't
or we
happen.
just stay in
Like we're still
action. Um,
holding out hope for that death day.
I was like, there has not been a Gremlins 3, there's not been a
Yeah,
Death Day 3, Terminator 3, we've just stayed in action.
just say correct.
Um, so yeah, let's switch the genre again. Let's get a romantic comedy, Megan.
Yeah,
Let's get a let's get a really let's get an old west
Like
Let's
a
get a Megan
romantic
in the
comedy
West.
Megan with a killer Megan would be hilarious.
Yeah, I think that would be great. She can be the overprotective mom. You know what it
Yeah.
is? It's not even a romantic comedy. We meet the parents it. It's Katie's romantic comedy. She
Yes.
comes home to
It's
Gemma
just
and
like I'm
Megan.
still
Yeah,
protecting Katie.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
That's what it
Yeah.
is. It's meet the parents.
Yeah.
It's Megan the parents. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's the third one. And then I'm in. I'm all
Yeah. I'm
in
sold.
with, well, you got to meet my mom and my aunt. I guess stepmom. You know
Yeah.
that she killed my biolog. That was a long time ago. Yeah, I'm in. That's what I want now.
Yeah.
We'll see how the box office does. Obviously, it's Thursday at the time of our recording, so we have no idea.
I am very
Uh,
curious. Like this costs about 25 to 30 million dollars and it's going up against F1. So it's got a rough road ahead of it. It should be interesting. I don't know if it's going to do what they thought it was going to do. Um, I don't know why this got released in the summer. I really don't. Like I feel like this was a
it's.
bad idea.
I feel like ever since The Purge, we've just decided to release horror sequels
Just right dead smack in the middle
in
of the
the
summer.
summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
Conjuring did it
strange
too,
to
because
me.
Conjuring used to be like November, and then it was like summer. I'm like, oh, hold on. Let's not do that. Um, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I've never seen one, I don't think, drop dead smack in the heat of the summer. It's usually at the top, like after the first big event, then it sort of comes in.
Yeah,
This coming in right before we, like with F1 dropping, and then we get our onslaught of July. I don't see how this does well. And that first Megan had legs because it came out in January of 2022, and so it just stayed. It was sort of the zeitgeist for a little bit. This isn't. It's going to be gone and forgotten really fast.
yeah, it's sitting at a 58% on Rotten Tomatoes. We
Yeah,
don't have an audience score yet. I think this is unfortunately going to be a like weird, but I do like it when we take weird swings like this, even
I
when
do
they don't
too.
work.
Yeah, like
Like,
I want people to continue to do these weird things where it's like, hey, we did it. We did an action film. We did that one. We're not going to replicate that. We're not going to beat that again. Let's try something new. So I want this to continue on. I just don't think this one was fully cooked and sort of leaves you with like, huh, all right, let's try again. Let's hopefully you get to try again, but let's try again.
yeah. Well, I think that's our show, everybody. So leave a review or a comment on our YouTube page if that's where you're watching, where Terrence also does our television show reviews and trailer reactions. And we're also on TikTok and Twitter at Hollywood ADI. I'm at, as always, Blake, and Terrence is at Terrence Tatum. And we will see everybody next time.
Later.